All right. Hi.
Hello.
All right. So today we are going to be talking about Ashton's short story inspired by the song Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift. And it is called Nothing Lasts Forever. Would you like to
Mm,
tell everyone about that?
yes. And before we get started, just so you know that I will not be naming a spoiler in the description, but this conversation does include spoilers. So if you've not listened to the story yet, the link will be down below and you can go check it out there and then come back.
Yes.
So the story is about a girl whose relationship, or a woman whose relationship has ended recently, and she's ready to, or she thinks that she's ready to move on and to find somebody new to date. But she keeps having like these thoughts because her boyfriend died in an unconventional way, that her life is really not hers and that she still owes something to her ex-boyfriend. And the story follows her as she finds somebody that she thinks that she can date and the course of actions that happens afterwards. And
Um,
it
s-
is a horror story. I don't think my description mentioned horror, but
oh
yes.
yes, horror story, spookies. So, as we know, it was inspired by the song Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift, but what exactly gave you like the inspiration for this particular story in this way?
But this song was actually inspired by, or this story was actually inspired by another song uh, off of the same album, This Love. And there's like a particular lyric that's just like, uh, this love like came back to me. And that mixed with uh, just kind of like this idea of like being in the bedroom and like something like horrific happening. Like I wasn't exactly sure like what would happen, but I was like, I just want a zombie and I want there to just be like this like grossness like that's comparing like sex to like a zombie eating somebody alive.
Okay. That was actually one of my questions is, as everyone knows, we're heavy spoilers, like basically right away, because we're not going chronologically here sometimes. I was very confused because I didn't know if he was supposed to be like alive, like he crawled his way out of the grave and has just been like stalking her for like the past, was it like 3 months or something? Or if he was like undead.
Yeah, so he is undead, and even more spoilers, at some point there will be an expanded issue of this story. There are two guys in the story. There is her ex-lover, Oliver, and there is another guy named Ezra. And for zombies, there are two different ways that like I mean, two main ways that zombies can come back. Like one is through a just kind of like some sort of like disease that creates this, or in like spreading through infections, or through biting, or a necromancer brings somebody back to life.
Dude.
And so Ezra in this version, he's completely innocent. And the expanded version, Ezra has gotten kind of like a sense from her that she's still like obsessed with this guy. Like he does some digging on her, finds out, has this theory that she killed him, and performs like necromancy. So there's like more to it. I just did not get around to it.
Okay, gotcha. Um, Speaking of necromancy, like I've always wanted to like write a story based on that, but I've not done enough research. So, necromancy slay. Maybe not in real life, but like in stories. Um, so, also, please don't hate me for this, but you said his name was Oliver Jones, and I went to school for an Oliver Jones, so I just kept picturing this guy that I went to school with, even though he probably doesn't fit his description at all. I mean, he was very tall, so maybe, but like,
Maybe.
so you said Oliver Jones, and I was like, OJ? Um, so what was the writing process for this one?
So the writing process for this was I kind of wanted to set the character to be like the main character. I never named her, to be kind of very pretentious. And so it's mostly her internal monologue. And I just really wanted to make it so everything that she said just made her come across as like somebody who thought very highly of herself and thought very highly of her ex-boyfriend. And so I wanted to do the writing style to reflect that. So there's a lot of words that I looked up specifically while writing this.
Yeah, I don't know if it was your intent, but I'm assuming since you said that she was supposed to be pretentious, but she wasn't exactly likable.
Yeah, no,
Um,
she was not. I mean, she was a murderer that was trying to cover up the fact that she was a murderer. So
I mean, we can get over that, but like, that leads me to my next question because you said you never named her. Was that an intentional thing of I don't want her to have a name because I want it to purely be from her point of view, and so I don't want her to just like name herself, or was it more so you just didn't feel the need to bring up the name like as you were writing?
yeah, I didn't feel a need to bring it up because since it was mostly from her point of view,
Mhm. Okay.
there would have never been like an opportunity to say her name unless one of the guys said it in conversation, but
Yeah.
just didn't find it super necessary.
So, as far as like themes and everything that you were trying to portray, what was the particular theme that you were going for, and how in your brain when you were writing it did you kind of calculate how to go about that? Sorry.
Yeah, so the theme was very much kind of this very obsessiveness and this feeling of not being able to feel complete as a person outside of the relationship
Mhm.
that she was in.
Yeah, because she
And
does tend to relate a lot back to her ex.
yes, so that's kind of like the idea of this, where she's just never has been really her own person. She's always been trying to hit the ideal of a person that never really cared for her in the same way. And so I just really wanted to emphasize the fact that every action that she did, she felt as if she still had to check in with this guy, even though to her knowledge was never coming back to her. And
Mhm.
she was just trying to find that person in somebody new.
Okay.
And very unhealthy relationship, obviously, but
So it
that's
almost kind of feels like, in a way, even though at least like she thinks that he's dead, even though there's this like paranoia about maybe he's not like, or that he's still like lingering. So it almost just kind of seems like she's still, even in like after his death, still seeking his approval.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had a question because of the way that he killed Ezra, but you kind of already answered it on accident because of the way that he was like torn apart and everything, like, ripped to shreds, like from like teeth and like I almost like thought that maybe you were tying in like from another story, and I was like, so is Oliver and like Maxwell from New Year's Day kind of like related in like the sense of what supernatural beings they are, but you kind of already answered that.
Yeah, I don't know why, but like each time I think of like a Taylor Swift song and I'm thinking about making it into horror, like it just screams supernatural to me. And I don't know if it's just because I started it off that way and now it's just like continuing,
Well,
or because I'm not a supernatural writer typically.
I think
So
too, like a lot of horror stories do tend to lean like in the supernatural genre. Like even if it's not heavily like ghost or demons or something, like there's a bunch of different supernatural beings that you can write about, and I think a lot of times it's really easy to gravitate towards that because I feel like I do when it comes to horror a
yeah,
lot of times as well. Yeah.
That has been fun though. Like, I hate zombies. Like, zombies are like my least favorite thing ever. It's just like glorified cannibalism to me. And so the fact that I wrote this is just kind of like I was very mad at myself when I was writing this, honestly. I was just like, I know what's gonna happen and I hate this.
So since he's a zombie, obviously he's not like a brain dead zombie.
Right. So some zombies, most of them are brain dead, but some renditions of them, they are actually smart. Like they have the human intelligence and can even like use objects. And it's
Mm.
just what differentiates them is like obviously their undeadness
Yeah.
and their desire to eat humans.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's what confused me a little bit is obviously he was eating her, which is very zombie-like, but he was still very much so his brain was very much intact and speaking full coherent sentences. So
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of like confused me a little bit. Um, so what was it? Because I know we heard a little bit about it, but we didn't exactly see a whole lot. And maybe there's more like seeing it in like the expanded version, because you mentioned there's an expanded version. What was it particularly that drew her to Ezra? Because I know they spoke of similar interests, and he obviously gave off this sense that he could, like, give her that sense of like a higher self. But what particularly was it? Because I know, especially on dating apps, which is the service she was using, she met Ezra, like, people can very easily fake that they are very like cultured, if you want to say. So what particularly was it with Ezra that drew her to him?
Yeah. So I very much base this off of my own experiences with using Hinge in particular, which I don't know if we're going to get in trouble for using naming a specific dating app, but that's fine. Um, so on that particular platform, so you can kind of like answer it in ways where you can choose questions that really like expand on your personality, or you can just kind of like do like vague answers.
Hmm.
And I imagine that the main character in this was very much like me, who was looking for somebody who put a lot more thought into their answers. And he was the only one who really put thought into his answers
Okay.
for
Yeah.
her. And his answers and what he was interested in reminded her so much of Oliver.
Okay, so she like specifically went after him because she was looking, maybe if not intentionally, like, but subconsciously, maybe like someone who, well, I guess she did say that who could match him or like best him at like his own. So, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I just remembered that. So, but with so she did kill him because there was a mention of her stabbing him. Why exactly did she do that? Because he obviously doesn't seem like the nicest person in the world, and maybe like he makes you feel inferior. Was it just a lot of emotional abuse and her having enough, or was there something kind of in the expanded version that you were thinking of that didn't like weave its way into this one?
Yeah. So what you said with kind of like he was emotional and she finally had enough. And then there's a very brief mention that I even forgot about when I got to the end of the story, where she's driving the car to the restaurant to meet Ezra for the first time, and she's checking her face to make sure there aren't like visible like marks on her face.
Hmm.
And I imagine like Oliver might have been very physically abusive and kind of like did something that ended up like hurting her face. And it was kind of like in that moment where she ended up like killing him.
Okay, because I know the scene that you're talking about, and the way I read it was just kind of like her like fixing her face from being very like maybe like crying or emotional, so I didn't. But yeah. Okay, so he was okay, so that makes sense. She just kind of like snapped.
Yes.
Okay. But that's also interesting, and I think it kind of plays into a way of like being like emotionally abused as well, not just physically, but like the whole gaslighting stuff because she got to the she obviously got to the point where she murdered him, yet she at the end when he was there, like she was still like wanting him.
Yeah.
So can you go into kind of like the complicated kind of maybe relationship that she has with him or her internal thoughts? Because obviously like she I can't remember the exact word, but it's like I know Ezra invited her to his home and she found herself like almost like enamored with them, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I used the correct word right there. My brain is going a million miles a minute. And then, but at the same time, like almost like hostile feelings in a way.
Yeah.
So, like, what was that push and pull when it came to Ezra versus also like the complicated relationship that she had with Oliver?
Yeah. So basically, she had it in her head so much that even though Oliver was all of these terrible things to her, people who are in abusive relationships tend to not really understand fully like just how bad the things are that are happening to them and the emotional effect that it's having on them. So for her, she's very much, even though she's trying to move on in her own way, she hasn't really healed her own trauma.
Mhm.
And she keeps thinking that, well, okay, if I find somebody like him, then I can continue to hold on to those parts of the relationship that made me whole. And at the same time, like, she's still very much grappling with this whole, like, she killed him. She still feels like his presence, like, she can't shake it because that presence is, like, partially it is real because this is horror and I decided to make that a real element. But I would imagine even just like once somebody breaks up in a normal situation, like not murder or anything, the person would still kind of not know who they are and what they are. Like it's going to feel like a piece of them is missing. And with an emotionally abusive and physically abusive relationship, they're very much going to say they're not going to understand all of the work that they are going to have to go through to really resolve all of that trauma. And so for her, she's just like, okay, well, I'm still scared that even though like I think that he's dead, but like what if he's like following me from beyond the grave? Like, what is he gonna think of me? Is he following me? Does he approve of what I am doing? And basically her entire life is revolved around him. And so she also kind of has this fear when she's entering into a new relationship that, well, this guy was bad, but he was something that I was comfortable with. But like, I don't know this guy. I'm driving an hour away. What if he's also bad? And kind of like start seeing like all these bad things that she saw in her last relationship with him. But
Gotcha.
then a lot of people in abusive relationships do go back to their abuser
Hmm.
pretty easily. And
Yeah.
so, unfortunately, Oliver was there and he wanted her, and she was just like, yes, like this is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing
Yeah.
because it's
So
familiar.
when aside from it being familiar, and obviously the complicated emotions that come with, having someone and then we'll just say a breakup. It was a very unusual breakup, I'll say, but like, um, so would you, what I'm trying to figure out how to word my question because I keep blinking. My makeup's freaking annoying me again. Um, so Would was she like actually in love with Oliver, or did she just feel important because he gave her a sense of like maybe a higher status or like a richer life, or was she actually in love with him, or like and it was just those things just happened to be kind of what came with it, or was she in love with what she thought life was supposed to be and what people were supposed to be talking about and what conversations and what you're supposed to do as adults and connecting. Like, did she have this whole thing built up in her mind to where she thought she was in love with him because of all this, or was it actual love?
Um, I would say I would hesitate to say that it was actual love. Like I think she had a lot of love for him, but it wasn't really about what he did for her. Like that's what she was looking for in Ezra was what
Mhm.
he could do for her. But with Oliver, it was, at least extreme obsession and infatuation
Okay.
because of what he could do, like how he made her feel.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common thing, um, when it comes to a lot of unhealthy relationships is not really what's, actually being in love, but just how someone's making you maybe feel about yourself. And so I was wondering because I was like, was she actually in love or was so I was yeah. I feel like that can be a very complicated emotion to kind of like deal with.
Yes.
Yeah. And I highlighted some stuff because I wanted to bring up like there are obviously references to the song in here. I know that you've made two references to Wildest Dreams, which is the song title, where it says, Never in my wildest dreams did I ever expect. And that was like in the very first sentence. And then it's when she goes back to Ezra's and um her friend had asked her how it was going, and she mentioned something about I'm trying to find it. I have it highlighted, but I have a lot of stuff highlighted, so good on me, I guess, for complicating it for myself. But was talking about how it was going better than even in her wildest dreams. Um, and then there was, let me see, I'm probably gonna find it because I know in the song you talk like there's the red lips and rosy cheeks, and there was like it was very near the very end of like
Yeah. A lot
I
of the
think
reference
that's yeah.
lyrics are at the very end to help you.
Yeah. Because there's the he was handsome as hell, and then there's the talking about how she was youthful and beautiful in her like white silk dress, so standing in a nice dress, and then um the sunset, which is sun was setting on that day. You asked me to tell you that I would always remember you in that moment, so long as we were as we lived. And then the red lips and rosy cheeks was obviously like if it were not for the redness of your lips and the slight flush upon your cheek showing evidence of the blood circulating in your veins. And then like he whispered, and then there's also the no one has to know what we do line, and this is getting good now. And
The hands
so
that are there.
yeah, the hand, yeah, there it is right here. He grabbed his hands grabbed my hair as he whispered in my ear, nothing lasts forever, not even in death. So I guess like my question is like when you're inserting like the references to the song, do you do it as you're writing or do you write out the scenes and then you like go back and you're just like, oh, okay, well this line would or this like reference would have actually gone like well here. Like I guess I'm curious about that.
So for this one, it was like a mixture because like I knew that I wanted to really have him at the end bring up some of these words, and I really wanted to take the song and I knew that I wanted to twist the words, like make them gross as opposed to
Sexy.
romantic because the song is very romantic. It's probably I don't know, she has so many good songs, but it's definitely in my top 10 of her favorite songs, of her songs that are my favorite.
I like
And
the music video version when the drums are louder.
yeah, I haven't watched it in a while. I need to.
That
Uh,
is the best version in my opinion.
but I just like, I'm going to have two different people read the parts for Ezra and the parts for Oliver. And I kind of felt bad for the guy who's going to be reading Oliver's part. I'm just like, hey, by the way, if you could like be chewing on something and say this is getting good now, can you do that? Like I know I already sent you the script, but just also this, thank you. So like it was kind of like peppering mixed with like I knew I wanted to do it, I just wasn't exactly sure when I was gonna do it.
Okay,
Because like
so it just coming on at the end was like just like the perfect opportunity is where it
yes.
all okay. Um, so I know, like I said, like this question's already answered because we know he's a zombie now. Um, but I remember like highlighting like basically like felt more like bones touching me rather than skin. So is that kind of supposed to give the hint that he's a zombie and kind of decomposing like his skin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh Same with
Because
the like lips that kind of felt like there was no moisture on them, and like how the like breath was like very rotten, or it tasted rotten.
hot.
So hot.
Yeah. So that was one of my, like I said, like sometimes we do these and I have questions and then the question is answered before I get to the questions, and then I'm like, oh, that kind of answered like three questions.
Yeah.
Um, I guess as far as like one of my questions was, and I know that we just talked about it like mostly, was like how you connected the story with the song. Was it, I know that you obviously connected it through lyrics and putting those in here, but was there anything like emotional wise that you were putting, like connecting from the song here? Like, because for me, I kind of felt like maybe it was because in the song, like this person seems like they know that something isn't going to last.
Yeah.
And although she had killed him and he'd come back to her, like, was that supposed to also like kind of play a role in here? Like she knew it wasn't going to last even upon seeing him again?
So no. Um, I think that was more of a, at that point, she was just so confused by like all of the complexities and her emotions and everything. And that kind of more so ties in with like this love
Hmm.
more than Wildest Dreams. But it's kind of, yeah, I will just say no on that
Okay.
part.
She seemed like rather calm about being like eaten. Like,
Yeah, I
is
think
there?
that at that point she kind of already felt dead,
Yeah. Yeah, I
and it
was
was just
gonna.
like a natural end, or not a natural end, but it kind of felt like she was obviously in pain and there was like some shock, but I
Mhm.
think that a lot of her just kind of was accepting it also.
Okay. Because I was going to ask if Oliver had any, like, I guess, superpowers in a way. That's a lame way to put it. Because he seemed to, like, know the stuff that she'd been thinking, but I guess he could probably gather that from, like, observing her, then I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And just the way that she was, I imagine like him like talking about like how much she was like kind of like turned on in the moment
Hmm.
was her just kind of making it obvious,
Yeah. Like,
which is
dang.
extremely fucked. Like she just like knows that this guy is dead in the room, and she's just like, "Oh, hello there."
Yeah, it's just kind of like, bro, there's literally a man like bleeding, like dead pool of blood on your like what is why? Like, you know what? Maybe you deserve to go. Obviously, you don't care about anyone else, so maybe you deserve this. Poor Ezra.
Yeah, like because she doesn't even care about herself.
Yeah.
Like at this point, basically all she is the remaining feelings that she had for Oliver.
Okay. So I'm assuming she's not going to be a zombie because he's straight up eating her.
Yeah, like
Okay. So it's not going to be like, tying in this love with the expanded version of this love came back to me, like he came back and then he killed me and then now look, I'm back.
oh no,
Okay.
no,
It's
no.
not going to be
This
like a
love
big
might
circle.
this love might have came back to her, but that's the end of
So with Ezra, he seemed like when they were meeting, obviously he was seemed to be having like not the greatest day when they met.
yeah.
So who he said he was on his profile, is that supposed to be like legitimately who he actually is, like how he presented himself, or was he kind of fabricating? Because we never know because he, you know, was
So I
eaten.
mean, let's just stick with like this version versus the expanded. In this version, absolutely. Like
Okay.
he is a genuinely good guy who just moved to the area, who happened to have like a lot of same interests as her and really would have been a great match for her. if she wasn't so tied up in her past relationship.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering that because I know like it's probably not like very important to the story, but I was just wondering because of how kind of distracted he kind of seemed. I was like, okay, did he have like was he actually having a bad day and this just happened to tie into everything and then it was just like, man, sucks for you. Or was
Yeah.
he more so just like pretending?
But at the same time, though, he did decide not to cancel on her, like double
Yeah.
check that she was okay, which is like a little bit messed up, but it was more of a like he was just having a bad day because of the rain. And I don't mention much of his background story, but like his background for that day that she never knows, or she kind of knows, but she doesn't really care.
Mhm.
Like he's having issues with like his internet, like there's like evidence of like somebody trying to like break into her house or his house. I don't know. I don't really know about that. I was like, well, how does Oliver even get there? I don't know. Maybe he's in like her car the entire time and she doesn't realize it.
She's just so
But
preoccupied.
yes.
Yeah.
And so, and then there's just like all these like little things that are happening with like his house that he just moved in with that he's trying to like take care of, but he like still really wants to meet her and kind of feels bad because she obviously is wanting willing to drive all the way in the rain, and he's like, I don't want to cancel on her, but like damn it, this is like I'm not a good day to for me to like actually
Yeah.
meet her.
So like
And
basically just
then
like little everyday things on top of like the everyday things that happen when you're new to a place and still getting settled in and then he'd made this commitment to meet someone and so it was just genuinely just not having a good day.
right.
Okay.
And then the waiter comes over and was like, hello, would you like this really expensive bottle of Chianti? It's just like, oh my God, like because I also don't mention that either, but this person that's definitely not based off of would have been like a vendor for restaurants. So like they owe him so much. He's just like, I don't want these places to be trying to like buy my like affection. And they're coming here and like she's saying that this is like a really expensive bottle of Chianti. And I don't even know what I want to order yet. Like what if I wanted fish? Now you're giving me a red wine.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, because like unfortunately Ezra's end was kind of cut short and they barely really knew each other. I was just really curious about that.
Yeah. I was curious if you caught the other song that I tied in.
I remember seeing something. I don't think I highlighted it though. That I was
Okay.
like, is this supposed to be from and I can't remember what it was, but I remember seeing something and wondering, but then like being like I remembered you saying that you'd kind of gotten this one and this love confused at the very beginning. So we can cut
Yeah.
this part out. But I remember seeing something, but I can't remember what it was, and I was just like, oh, it's probably just like a fluke then. Because she
Yeah.
only mentioned
No.
like Wildest Dreams in this love.
So I also incorporated clean,
That
where
was it.
she's like, yes, where she is looking at the like gravesite and like basically it's like the exact opposite. Like,
Like so many references that are made in her songs could also be like just very common things. So sometimes I don't know like when you're trying to tie something in and then when it's just like, no, this is just like a common thing.
yeah,
So
it might be because I did sprinkle in a bit that I wasn't even
yeah.
that I probably don't remember now.
Yeah, like I don't want to be one of those people where it's like, wow, you told someone they needed to calm down. Like you obviously referenced you need to calm down because nobody ever says that.
Obviously.
But no, I found it. I don't know if this is the part you were talking about, but I remember it being the part where I was like, is she referencing? And now that you said clean, I remember that being it. Traces of Oliver still linger on my mind like a dash of red wine on a white silken gown's impossible to remove, like a wine stained dress you can't wear anymore, and then gone it
Yes,
was okay.
absolutely.
Okay. I was like, I remembered there was something, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah. That's the fun of this, is just like sprinkling in like little things for Taylor Swift fans.
Yeah. So, like, I'm glad that you brought that up because I remember on my first read through being like, no, because she mentioned this love and Wildest Dreams. She never mentioned this.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I guess it's just like a coincidence.
I with the clean tie-in, I really wanted to kind of like reference how everything that she was feeling was like the exact opposite of that song because
Mhm,
you and I talked about it when we were doing a will this make a good horror story for like 1989, and you were talking about some personal stuff, but basically like how clean really resonated with you because of the implications of finally being able to move on and like finally feeling like this sense of like freedom.
mhm.
And so with her, I really wanted to like emphasize the fact that like she was not having that moment. Like even though she should have, I think like the way that Oliver ended up dying and like being removed from her life, she never really got that closure that she needed.
Yeah, and
And
I
she
think
wasn't allowing herself to either.
well, I think it's kind of hard to have that closure of being, clean of someone when you kinda murdered them, because I
Yeah.
think that's always going to be, like, a stain on your if you believe in the soul, like, a stain on who you are, and so I don't know if it's, like I mean, I've never done that, obviously, but, like, I would imagine that anyone who has, like, never quite moves on from that. At least I
Yeah.
would hope not.
Right. I was curious if you caught on to the fact that she killed him before the end when it was stated explicitly.
Um, I kind of thought that maybe something with, like, the her going to check, like, the dirt outside and stuff, or, like, recover the dirt, like, because I know that it made a mention of, like, flowers and stuff, but she seemed, like, a little too, like, paranoid about it for it to be just, like, flowers.
Yeah.
So, like, I suspected it, but, like, obviously, like, you don't, like, know until the end. Yeah,
Mm.
but, um, so I know this probably isn't important, but I, kinda just wanna know. So, obviously, when you work a job where you have to wear a uniform or certain kind of clothing of any kind, it kinda takes over your wardrobe. So, it seems like the majority of hers, it says is corporate attire. What does she do? I wanna know because I'm like, first of all, how old are you? Second of all, where do you find such jobs?
Yeah. Um, Part of her was based off of me, and just when I was starting to like date again, I was just like, I hate every single thing that I own. I don't have any cute dresses. Literally, the only thing in my wardrobe is like blazers. I was just
Yeah.
like, why do I not have a single dress? So that was kind of like from my own frustration of like, dang it, like there's nothing cute for a date because I did end up like wearing a blazer on a date because I didn't have anything to wear. I'm just like, I hate this.
Okay, I was wondering, like, so is she, like, very work oriented, or was it just more so, like, you have your
She,
work clothes and then you have your, like, trash goblin clothes?
yeah, like it was very much again like based off of me, and for me, like I had like workout clothes
Mhm.
and basically everything else that I had, I felt like could transition well from like the office to that. And I kind of like felt very cool, like having like specifically like nice outfits because it made me feel more important. And I
Okay.
just that's how she was too. So this is based off of partially based off of me. Didn't kill anybody to my knowledge and bury them in my backyard.
I'd hope
Because I
you'd
didn't
know that.
have yeah, I didn't have a full privacy fence. So
No,
um
gotta get one of those
anyways,
first.
that's not one of the reasons why I didn't kill
No.
anybody. Anyways, so I would say mid to late 20s
Okay,
is about how old she is.
okay. So that was Nothing Lasts Forever, which you can watch on Ashton's channel, and I will link that in the description below. And it will be well, I guess it's available on the day that I post this, so March 13th. So, yeah,
Yeah.
head over to her channel and check it out. I guess if you watched this far, you've already ruined it for yourself, but yeah.
Still worth it. I'm kind of proud of the visuals for it. And also, this is what the
6th.
fifth?
I think it's the 6th.
Okay. Well, either
Yeah.
way, we have a collection of stories that are all Taylor Swift songs that we turned into horror stories. And I know I will have the playlist linked below for that. And if you want more, consider subscribing because the next one will be coming out on April 13th. And it's going to be covering Enchanted. And this time it will be Kayla's story.
Yes. All right. Anyway, yes. Everything linked in below. Go check out Ashton's channel, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.